And we are live. Welcome everybody again to a last installment for Guatemala on our Where in the World week that features Guatemala. I have my good friend and colleague Steve Smith with me this morning. How are you, Steve?
Very good, thanks, Reed. It's beautiful weather in Seattle.
Great.
Feels like
Uh,
Guatemala.
it's not 109 degrees or
Not
anything.
anymore. No, we're in the high 70s.
Okay, well, I'm in Arizona. It's probably 109 degrees here, but that's normal. Okay, so today we're going to do our PowerPoint that features a tour that we do in Guatemala, and Steve is going to be our captain this morning, and I'm just going to provide the comic relief and ask a question now and again. If you're tuning in, and I'll keep my eyes on the chat function if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment while we go through this. And I think that's all we need for introduction. So without further ado, Steve, I'll turn it over to you to put that PowerPoint up on the screen, and we'll go for it.
Share screen, PowerPoint, share. There we go. I think that should be it.
Beautiful.
Good.
Take it away.
Okay, well, so I've adopted 19 years ago, adopted with my wife a girl from Guatemala at 6 months old, and wanted to get involved in the country and wanted to keep my daughter connected to her homeland. And I got involved with this organization called Global Visionaries, which takes high school students in the Seattle, and let's see, there's a program in Chicago and in San Francisco. Anyway, takes them through a global leadership program, ending with several weeks in Guatemala, where they mix it up with Guatemalan students doing the same thing and work on projects hand in hand. This is not about Americans coming to save Guatemala, but working side by side with them. And in this case, it's high school students and making them aware of why Guatemala matters to Americans and should, given our sketchy history with Latin America politically. And it's and I decided to over time, by being on the board of this organization, the one thing I could offer with my experience from Rick Steves organizing tours was a tour of Guatemala that combined aspects of what the students experienced, thus the name experience, in real life lessons in Guatemala with some of the highlights of sightseeing. So it's in this country, it's a blend of the two, experience and sightseeing. Can I move on, Reed?
Absolutely.
All right.
Dive in.
So let's see. Now we're not moving. Let's see. Why aren't you going? Okay. Whoops. I guess I could just do that. Okay. Yeah. So Guatemala, it's a colorful country, a vibrant country of outdoor markets, produce, colonial architecture that might remind you of part European, but bright yellow, bright colors like this, the church at La Merced in Antigua. It is a colonial country that blends a history of Spanish occupation, thus its colonial history, with indigenous Mayan culture in a way that I don't think any other Latin American country does. So you'll see sites like this in the ancient capital of Antigua. Oh yeah, I gotta go down. And well, here, let's get started. Speaking of Antigua, our tour starts there. And this is the ancient capital of Guatemala. It is now Guatemala City, since an earthquake covered the town in the 1700s. In any case, you're looking across at about a city of about 40,000 people, about 45 minutes from the airport. We provide transfer service for people, so it's an easy access from the United States into the Guatemalan airport and then into our comfortable, safe little town of Antigua, ringed by volcanoes. It's really a remarkable setting for a city. What are you doing there, Reed? You're looking like you've got a volcano behind you. I think there's something like 32 volcanoes in Guatemala. I mean, when you fly in, if it's daylight, you'll fly between, you're dodging volcanoes. Some of them are still, well, active in the sense that they're spewing steam. That's all that, and red lava at night, but you never gets close to you unless you decide to hike to the top of one of these, I guess. Oh, yes. So I have to do it this way. Our hotels on this tour, it's long been my philosophy traveling to a developing country like Guatemala. You need a good refuge. You need a hotel that allows you to be very comfortable, not over the top luxury, but plenty comfortable air conditioning, courtyards like this that's authentic, that feels like you're in Guatemala, that doesn't feel like a Marriott hotel. Family run. We take, I don't know, around 18 people on these tours. I've done 4 or 5 of them myself, and a couple other friends have led several themselves as well for this same charitable contribution that we're now working with you, Reed, on, that I really appreciate your following to turn people onto this country. So hotels are comfortable, right? Let's see.
And actually,
And
this picture that's
yeah.
behind me is from the rooftop of our Antigua hotel the last time around. So that's the
Mhm.
view from the rooftop.
Oh, yeah, that's where you. Oh, right, cool. That's right. So the city of Antigua, is it's 1 to 2 story buildings mostly, except for the churches and monasteries. And we'll start the tour on full day, I guess day 2. We'll have dinner together the first night, a little happy hour, get to know each other. You'll be again transported from the airport in a private vehicle to the hotel, and then we'll get out and tour the city with a local expert the next day, with me and William providing context. That my role on the tour is to try to link Guatemala's history and what our local guides say into a larger picture, if you want, or story about the history of this country and how it relates to other events in the world that make sense to Americans. Okay, so it is, yeah, first night. It's a cobbled. I mean, it's a beautiful little city. Antigua is popular as particularly at night. It's lovely, and again, it's safe. It's a good place to be. I wouldn't want to be out at 3 in the morning like most any city in the world on my own. But what we do is perfectly safe, and we feel comfortable starting the trip here with several nights. All right, all day in Antigua, I mentioned before. So this little slide gives you a bit of an explanation. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we'll visit ruined abbeys like this Franciscan Abbey in downtown Guatemala. Again, earthquakes, volcanoes have played a big role in Antigua's history. One reason the capital is now not there anymore, and you'll get a sense of that. When you look at this image, Reed, it reminds me of, like, I feel like I'm in the Colosseum or in the Forum in Rome a little bit, don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Anyway, vast. I mean, the size of the ruins that we see in Antigua give you a sense of how important the city used to be. And remember, this is not something most people know. Latin America, when it first got its independence from Spain, was called Guatemala. So that included Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, etc., Belize. Now they have splintered over the years, obviously since then in the early 1800s, to their own countries. But this was the country of Latin America and the capital, Antigua. It is, the skies, I tell you, the weather is year round. I have it on my phone. The year round weather is, because it's at 5,000 feet and you're not that far from the equator, it's 80 degrees year round, 75, never hotter. And the highs, never much colder. There's a rainy season that we avoid, but a rainy season in a country like this means you get a couple hours of rain, right? And you work around that on if we get that, and then it dries up in the afternoon.
Don't
So
they
yeah,
have don't they have a little marketing hook like the land of eternal spring or something like that?
yes, exactly. Yep, yeah. And you can see every shot seems like it has a volcano in the backdrop, and that's because there are, even behind your head, Reed. They're just everywhere. Yeah, and the architecture when buildings weren't ruined by a volcano or an earthquake, and the cobbled streets are, it's just a lovely, comfortable experience. The warm climate, the slow pace of Antigua makes a great and reasonable prices for eating out. Just makes a nice way to start a trip to Guatemala. Colorful buildings. I love the city. This is the Arch of Santa Catalina, sort of ground zero in the city, you could say. That is a volcano at the end of the road, again, covered in clouds. And by the way, on a lot of those volcanoes, we'll see shortly, on the sides of them grow coffee plants, because they seem to do well at that elevation and latitude in Guatemala. All right, so we have a good, whoops, speaking of that, the next day after a full day in Antigua, and you'll have another day of free time, and then the afternoon we'll head out to do some talks about, learn about coffee beans. It depends on the time of year that we're there, but either way, we'll transfer to smaller trucks from Antigua to get up to the side of one of these volcanoes and have this experience of picking the beans if it's the season, which is generally sometimes in December, January, maybe even into February. They got to be red to pick them. And when we can do that, and sometimes when we can do that, that's the experience part of this. We get a sense of how tough this work is and how many beans it takes to make a cup of coffee. It's just astonishing. It's kind of backbreaking work, and you could be picking for hours as a gringo down there and realize you have 2 or 3 cups of coffee you just picked. Oh boy.
Yeah. If any of our viewers are just tuning in for the first time this week and this sort of coffee farm experience sounds interesting, I would direct you back to our sort of roundtable coffee chat that we did on Wednesday. You can tune into Sarah's Facebook and find that in the video section, because there were 5 of us there talking about how we connected with that experience and what an impact it made on us. So if this is something that sounds interesting, I'd refer you back to view that as well, to get those impressions.
Yeah, we'll get. I want to move forward here. Oh, nuts! I thought I had more images of the coffee picking. Um, I want to say that well, I'll go. We
Oh, Maria.
also nowadays. Yeah, see Maria there. Yeah, yeah. These are pics from a little bit ago. Yeah. Anyway, we sit on the side of a volcano, and the locals bring us a picnic lunch, a warm, hot picnic lunch that's brilliant. And then folks who survived the Civil War of Guatemala, that's new since this tour, Reed, come up and talk to us on our imprint tours with you, about what the Civil War was like, how they experienced it, how coffee plantations were devastated, and how they've had to recover since the end of the Civil War, which was like 1996, I think. Anyway, 36 years of Civil War ruining the country's economy. One thing we do on this tour that's great fun, a couple times when we can, is have dinner with host families. This is a pretty nice house, this one, and sometimes we're in garages and open areas, and or part of a little square, so that we can meet the locals and mix it up with as many Guatemalans at our table as there are Americans down there. And this happens to be the family where Maria, my daughter, was on the program, where she lived for her 2 weeks in Guatemala as the end of the Experience Global Visionaries program that she was a part of. Yeah, we're trying to get people in touch with local cultures close and as best as we can, right? All right.
I think we did a really good job with that. This is the best tour I've ever been involved with for that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I would love to have updated my slideshow for this purpose, but if people want in the future, if there's some way you want on the website, Reed, we can show shots of us, and I'm sure you have it from our trip, on the side of that volcano listening to the stories from the folks who survived the Civil War. And that was, again, covered the other day when we met in that coffee chat thing, covered well. Now, this is out of order, but it doesn't matter. We still do the same day here. We go up and visit the city dump in Guatemala City. It's a day trip from Antigua, because you want to minimize, most people want to minimize their time in Latin America's largest city of Guatemala City and its largest dump. And what you're looking at is the view we get from above of the garbage dump in Guatemala City. And it is like a mini Grand Canyon, I guess you could say. You're looking way down with vultures hovering above, and these dump trucks come and offload their refuse. And something like 4,000, it used to be many more, locals made, and it may be fewer now because they're trying to reduce this, a living off of scavenging from the dump. And what happens is you see the dump truck pull in, and when they see the license plate of the dump truck, the locals know the ones that come from the richer neighborhood. So they put their hand on the side and walk with their hand on the side of that dump truck. And I think up to 7 or something can claim it. And then after that, you can't claim that dump truck. And
there's actually a protocol.
Yeah. Do we have? Yeah.
Rules.
There's a good view of what you see. It is astonishingly big. And and the lesson for I mean, there's no recycling program except for this in Guatemala, in the country of Guatemala. And it's incredible to see these short, diminutive Guatemalan people walk down, men and women, and some children. Although now they're good about patrolling how the limited age or minimal age. They trek down into this canyon. It's deeper than this image makes it look, but you get a sense of it. And they have these big white plastic bags that they fill with any number of things, from tubes of toothpaste that aren't finished to plastic bottles to anything they can find that could be resold for any value whatsoever. And then they live in these favela kind of developments, these corrugated tin lean-tos all around the dump, right? The people. and who scavenge from the dump. And so we get a good explanation of how that works. And then there you are. How about that image? Look at those people scavenging from the dump. I mean, I don't know how well it is on your screen, but I see that pretty well. It is a powerful lesson to those of us living comfortable lives in a rich country of the United States, how the reality of existence for other people in parts of the world, right? Isn't that amazing, Reed? Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've shown you that pic before. Yeah.
I don't believe I've seen this one.
Yeah, that's a good zoom lens there, but that is that's what it's like. Okay, then we visit. The reason we go here isn't just to understand the reality of life, and we walk through the favela on our tour, on our imprint tour. Now we've improved it. It's a good reality check with the group that takes us there. By the way, is called Safe Passage, and their organization was founded something like 20 years ago by an American woman who was so moved. It was a Christian movement on her part to develop a school in the dump. And that's where we are right now. These two girls are at the cafeteria in the school of the dump that's funded largely by well, there's several of them, by the way. The one we visit is funded in part by the University of Washington. And it looks like an elementary school you'd see in Seattle. It's beautiful. Maybe I have some pictures of it. There, you get to see their classrooms. Oh no, nuts. This is all I have right now for this talk. And we do go to a rural school, but let's see, can I go back there? We visit the school, we talk to people, we visit the workshops for people from the dump who are being instructed how to make jewelry from plastic, if you remember. It's astonishing. All of the programs that have evolved from this one limited program just to break the cycle of poverty in Guatemala by giving children of the parents who work scavenging in the dump a different outlook for the future. And these two girls, their parents make their living off the dump, for example. The next day we take off, and this is on our tour too, and we visit this little town of El Segundo Cruz. And this is a rural visit because education is so important, not just to breaking the cycle of poverty in dumps like in Guatemala City, but in the countryside where only a fraction of this population has even an elementary school education. And that's because they don't live near schools, right? And they don't have cars to get to the cities where the schools are. So Global Visionaries and other organizations, but Global Visionaries has got like 40 or 45 schools, largely in small towns and rural areas, so that we're bringing education to where people live. And we spend a day, we did there, Reed, with the local mayor of the town and get a sense of the schoolroom that you see here, that Global Visionary students help build along with local contractors and money that's financed through Global Visionaries. And we get a sense of, boy, what a difference that makes in the town. Let's see, I hope. Yeah, there's the school that we visit. Look familiar?
I do, I remember that.
It looks so pastoral, doesn't it? Yeah. Meanwhile, the poverty is unbelievable because you walk, let's see, do we have some slides? I wish, yeah, we have lunch with the locals here whose children benefit from that school right there. This is just one example. It's now got 2 more classrooms, by the way, since this, and a different color since this one. And Reed, you saw a slightly bigger structure, also a playground now added. So improvements are made over the time. Yeah, this is about 7 or 8 years ago, Reed, yeah. Anyway, we have lunch with the people who benefit from the school, and we have translators who help us. This is mixing it up again. We're not trying to create a barrier between ourselves and the locals. We want to, best as we can, mingle and understand also understand huge improvements in things, not just educationally, because bringing education is obviously a key to eradicating poverty in countries like Guatemala. But also we learn about how they cook, because I don't know if you were with me, Reed, when we were there. We saw these 3 elderly women, they looked elderly, hauling up huge bags of sticks from the river below up to their corrugated tin little huts, like the one you're seeing here with what look like bamboo siding, right? To cook on a cinder block stove in the middle of their hut. And this has created both emphysema health problems hugely. Now, since this image, there have been improvements in those stoves and ways of cycling the smoke so the locals, when they're cooking in their main living rooms, don't breathe it. And they're much more efficient as well. So it requires less deforestation and chopping down of trees, because so many people in Guatemala cook off of firewood, right? Of wood that they scavenge.
And that's a problem across the developing world. So
right. Reed, I think a lot of the lessons are not unique to Guatemala that we're seeing. The importance of education, how you deal with poverty, right? And deforestation as well, right? Then we hop on a boat and we drive up to Lake Atitlan. Depends on where we're staying. We have a couple different hotels we like to use, but our group, gives you a good idea of what our groups look like. Hop on a boat, and then Lake Atitlan is one of the more spectacular sites in that I've ever seen. It's, if you're from the Northwest, we sort of call it the Crater Lake of Guatemala, but that's almost doing it a disservice, because as spectacular as Crater Lake is, it doesn't have volcanoes ringing its side. And we check into our hotel. This group, we have a hotel with this gorgeous view above a little bit, the lake below. The hotel you and I stayed at, Reed, is the one we'll use more often, probably because they have more rooms and it's a little bit easier to get into. But this hotel in Sonoma, this is my deck. This is my balcony, and the view from my balcony with my daughter Maria and my wife Karen enjoying the view. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Lake Atitlan. And I can't remember how many volcanoes ring this lake. And at night, if you're paying attention and it's not cloudy, you'll see lava flow down the sides of these volcanoes, or some of them. It's just astonishing, right? And we have all day. It's hard to take a bag picture of Lake Atitlan. Isn't that amazing one, Reed? A fellow, I can't claim credit for this one. A fellow on the tour took this one for me, and I liked it so much. Anyway, we scoot out during the day on our day on Lake Atitlan. We visit a women's cooperative, and the villages that ring the lake are generally cozy. And let me see if let's see, do we get a sense of them? Yeah, and little markets that you wander through. It's 100% Mayan, by the way. And yeah, and this culture, this kind of picture, you're going to see everywhere in Guatemala, right? It's not particular to the lake, except that we go to a women's cooperative here and see how they weave their carpets and rugs and shirts and clothing. And then lots of us like to buy that stuff because it's a great price and it supports the women's cooperative. And the reason there are women's cooperatives really commonly in this northern highlands part of Guatemala is because during the 36-year Civil War, the men in the villages were conscripted into the military. So villages were left without men, basically. So the women had to figure out how to make a living on their own. And so that's a great lesson in that manner. Yeah, there you are. And so we get to see the traditional style. We get to see a beautiful showroom. Well, beautiful. I mean, it's modest, but it's lovely. And almost nobody gets out without buying something. It's just hard not to. Do you want to say something, Rita? You look like am I babbling too much?
No, it's great. But I was also thinking about, as we walked through the village, there was a place to see them working with cacao, right? To make
cocoa. Oh, that's right. We did that. Yeah.
We stopped at a place where they were painting, and it's such bright, vibrant stuff. I actually bought a little painting for my for the office, and so there is the weaving, but it's like there's all kinds of other things going on too.
And we take free time in this cool little town too. So there's the chocolate tasting, the cacao, and the textiles that you mentioned, and some of the artists that we like to support, and their independence, right? Yes. Then we have 2 nights on Lake Atitlan, and we have dinner together. One of the 2 nights, and it depends on the tour you're on. Sometimes we do dinner together both nights because people love the view from the hotel, and we just figure it out, and they ante up and give us their cost for the second night. Sunsets are unbelievable on this lake, and boat rides across it are magical. Although the winds do kick up in the afternoons, and it can be a little bit bumpy, if you remember. Yeah. So then we take an airplane. What's that, Reed?
That hotel that we stayed, right across the street was like that nature preserve, and there was a butterfly house, and it was really fun to see some of the wildlife and some of the flora there. So
that's been an evolution since this tour, and I want to mention that ecotourism is big in this part of the world too. I don't know if you've run into it in parts of your travels as well, Reed, because I'm not that familiar with other parts of the world, but boy, in Latin America, it's big. And we see it at that hotel, for example, the preserve that's right next door. The monkeys, the howler monkeys, and those animals, they were coati, I think, Koaiti. They look like some combination of a little, a raccoon and a bear or something. I couldn't quite figure out.
Maybe a little anteater in them. They've got
their snouts. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, anyway, then we go to the drive to the airport in Guatemala City to head north, and this is what we do on our tour from Lake Atitlan to the Mayan, the greatest Mayan among one of the greatest Mayan ruin sites in the world at Tikal. If you're in Guatemala, we have run this tour with and without this flight up to the ruins in Tikal because it adds price to the tour, the flight to and from, and the transportation center. But I can't imagine going to Guatemala and not experiencing. That'd be like going to Italy and not going to Rome to see where it all started. Right. I mean, this is 60%, 65% of the residents citizens in Guatemala are Mayan, have Mayan history. My daughter is 65% Mayan. Right? It is, imagine that. I want you to think about this, the readers or the viewers, that imagine if 60% of Americans were Native Americans, whom we call Indians. What a difference. And that's what they're dealing with in Guatemala. That's one reason the indigenous people have been disadvantaged, disenfranchised for so long. And they account for 60%, more than half of the population. Thus, it's a big issue in countries like Guatemala to deal with this issue. Right? Anyway, we get to go up to the sea there. Historic. It's amazing too when you go to Tikal. We have different hotels we stay in. Sometimes we stay right at the national park that is Tikal. Sometimes with you, Reed, we stayed at that Lake Petan about 45 minutes away at a very cool sort of eco-tourist hotel. And it just depends on the time of year and where we can get into. But we're always close for all day into this remarkable hike in through with howler monkeys jumping around the trees above you. I mean, you're in the jungle now. Suddenly the climate is quite different. This is humid and hot because you're virtually to the Yucatan. You're virtually to Mexico here. And it's a totally different climate. And so we like to get started early as we can so that it's as cool as possible. And we walk quite a bit. Although I noticed on our last trip, they had these vehicles around to help people who had trouble mobility issues because it's a fair amount of walking. And I think that helped some of our tour members out, don't you think, Reed?
Yeah, I think they transport us at least to the edge of the ruins. Yeah.
My favorite part, by the way, is when we entered in the bus to the national park. I don't know if you remember this. I wanted to say this in our coffee chat the other day. Was the sign that said Jaguar Crossing?
Oh yes.
Slow down. We would see deer or I don't know, elk crossings, jaguar crossings. And it's not a joke. It's real. I mean, you are somewhere different. Oh, and it's so exciting. It's so funny. The first time I went here, and I think you and I have talked about this because you've been before with Julie. I think we stayed in the hotel right at the property, right in the park. And it was a little simple. It was above a youth hostel, but not a lot, which is why we've looked for slightly more comfortable accommodations a little bit outside the park. But boy, we had screens around as walls, right? And as soon as those howler monkeys wake up in the morning, and it's like 4 a.m, they sound like lions and tigers. It is a scary sound. And I couldn't get Maria out of bed to save my life to do the sunrise view from the top of this temple. Oh man, what an experience. And you'll hear the howler monkeys whether you sleep there or not. It's quite an experience. Anyway, Tikal was one of the great what do I want to say, basis for the Mayan civilization, the great civilization that in this one area, and it's vast, are the ruins of Tikal, and they're still uncovering. I mean, there were 100,000 people who lived here over 1,000 years ago. 100,000. Yeah. That's over 1,000 years ago. That's even big by European standards. Right. That's like, and their civilization. It's hard obviously pre colonialization from the conquest by the Spaniards. Their civilization was so advanced, and thanks in part to diseases, as you know, brought by the Europeans, and drought issues, climate change, and deforestation by building these monuments. They don't know for sure what happened, but the civilization ultimately died out and dispersed to other parts of Guatemala. Anyway, we get a great tour. We have a good local guide here who really makes these ruins come alive. And whether it's sunrise or sunset, to be sitting in this jungle, you can climb up to the top of these ruins. And I like this picture just as sort of dramatic. It's not a great one, but you can see that the tops of various ruins rise above the jungle canopy of the trees. And if you get up on one of those, you see nothing but a canopy of the jungle forever. I mean, as far as possible, except for these these ruins that poke above. That's a powerful sight.
I think that's one of the things that sets Tikal apart is that jungle setting. You know, I've been to Chichen Itza and Uxmal and a couple others on the Yucatan, and they're all wide open places, right? They've cleared back the jungle, and it's just open spaces from temple to temple and structure to structure. And here, there's just that mysticism or whatever that you've captured with this shot of how the combs of the pyramids just pop up
Right.
above the jungle canopy. It's really dramatic.
Yeah, we learn, we spend, I don't know, 3 hours with a guide, whatever it is, and then time on our own to explore. And we do a good restaurant meal. We had a good meal there too. So we're pacing ourselves, I think, well for quite an experience. And we get so many, I mean, it's just astonishing to think, to travel in Guatemala today, what a contrast it is to this poverty that we see and experience and don't try to hide from, to this incredible civilization that was so advanced for its day and age, right? It's quite the juxtaposition, I think, when you travel there. And it's head shaking a little bit, just like makes you really think, wow, where are we going to be? You know, and I don't know, 500 years as Americans, we're at the top of the heap now, but there are lessons to learn there, I'm sure, from other civilizations like Tikal. All right. Yeah, there you are. We have the whole day. And we spend 2 nights now up in Tikal, and that near Tikal. So that gives us all day at the ruins. On this trip, I think we did 1 day there, which is such an improvement to have 2 nights and a full day at the Tikal ruins before heading back to the airport. And then last night in Guatemala City. Let's see, do I have a picture? Oh, there's the ruins. Okay, I didn't know. Sorry, I should have been advancing to these ahead of time. And hey, Reed, thanks. To let your readers know, I've been dealing with some, my parents are elderly and my mom's in the hospital right now. So I wasn't able to spend the time preparing as I would have liked to, but it's a place I know pretty well. And Reed told me I could be relaxed about this. So thank you all for your understanding and patience as I sort of fumble through this talk. I haven't given a talk about travel reading so dang long with COVID. It's let alone talk about Guatemala, because there's just nothing to do right now. But well, I should be on. I mean, thank God for you for doing this, because I think that really helps promote the country, whether they go with us on a tour and see it in this manner or just learn about the issues in Guatemala. That makes me happy. However,
and the visuals are what are important, right? We discussed for an hour, the 5 of us, on Wednesday about our experiences, and then we had Diego on Monday to talk about that side of the business. So the visuals just complete the picture. So
that's a good point. Yeah, this is just painting the picture, putting it together a little bit. Yeah, and so this was sort of the central business district, you could say, of the community, the region of Tikal, the city of Tikal. And all these buildings have this. Some are funerary, some are meeting, like the Forum in Rome, temples and buildings for the mucky mucks to meet in. It just depended on what the structure was. And unlike the pyramids in Egypt, though, I don't think, if I remember right, Reed, that people were buried in these. That's not their point. They're not burial sites the way they.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, these shots give you an idea of what you're looking at. Yeah, it is just they're still digging ruins out. You could get a sense from this one. I can't even remember what this building is, but it looks like it's being sort of releasing itself from the jungle, right? I mean, it is just buried in those trees. And more buildings every year, I think, are being uncovered. And we learn that much more about the Mayan civilization. Yeah. Wow. I have a lot of good images to go in this show. Yeah. This is why you want so much time there. I don't know what the square mileage is now, but imagine, 1,000 years ago, 100,000 people is going to create a lot of ruins. And since they're expanding all the time, it's quite a sight to visit. All right. So, day 9, trip ends, but your adventure continues. The one thing, do I have another image here? Yeah. Oh yeah, here are some of the hotels. I forgot I did it this way, Reed. Yeah, this just gives people a sense of, these are the hotels we use on the tour. I didn't try to click pictures of hotels we didn't use. Right, this is the place at Tikal that we stay at sometimes. And that's my daughter walking there. So it's perfectly comfortable, although we do have more comfortable rooms like this. And they're always, again, I mentioned before, characteristic places, comfortable, where you can get away and have little couches. I mean, that's the way people live in Guatemala, is in courtyards and outdoors a lot, although the rooms are air conditioned when it's important. Yeah, and this is from.
I remember being very, very comfortable everywhere we went. The food was great everywhere we went.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I need the pictures to remind me, because what I remember about Guatemala is the people and those connections, right? But we were extremely comfortable while we were there.
This image read reminds me, this is a hotel we use sometimes on Lake Atitlan, and the owners of this hotel, the Hotel Tizuma, and if your readers come, I mean, your viewers want to go there on their own, just contact you and I'll let them know how to get in touch with this place. The owners are remarkable people. The husband, both of them worked for the United Nations during the Civil War. He's Belgian and she's, I think, Colombian or Paraguayan.
That's right.
And they've been married for a while, and they started this hotel as a retirement place after the Civil War. And the first night at the hotel, he talks to us about the Civil War, tells us what it was like, his role in trying to barter a peace accord. And together with locals, Guatemalans, we get quite a picture of the brutality of the war and the reality and Americans' role in instigating that we talked about a lot the other day. And then the second night, his wife, who's an attorney, talks about women's rights. And she's the one who set us up with the Women's Cooperative. And we've seen it in the day. And then we come back that night. We sit and have drinks around and have this view before dinner, before a great dinner. Imagine that. You're sitting with this view and you've had a great day of understanding, just of seeing beautiful scenery, but also we mentioned the chocolate, the importance of chocolate to Guatemala, but the Women's Cooperative and weaving, etc. And then you come back and you hear how it goes together and how this can help launch this country back into a better place with more supportive of cooperatives and women's rights issues that are covered very well on our second night there. It's the way to travel, man. I wish I could do this everywhere I go, Reed. Have a beautiful day, then come back and have somebody talk to me. And most nights, you might remember, we have people. Remember Diego's mom came and talked to us? She's American. Absolutely. That was one of our nights in Antigua. She's 76 years old or something, and she's lived down there for 50 years, right? Married, and she's Diego's mom, and she's lived in Guatemala. And talk, well, wow, how interesting that is. How many people, Americans, have lived in Guatemala 50 years and can tell you about it. Right. I just think that's such a value. I mean, we've been doing this long enough that we've made these connections, and our tour members win by that, I think.
Yeah. And by the way, just to remind you, you might have forgotten that the Belgian fellow came down and talked to our group. We weren't staying in his hotel.
Oh, right. Thank you.
And in all of our talking, none of us brought that up. That was another one of those powerful moments where our eyes were really opened because of his personal experiences that he was able to share.
Lovely man. He also plays a beautiful guitar. And at his hotel, he'll play guitar during dinner. It's pretty nice too. Yeah, he'll travel, and so will his wife, to talk to us wherever we stay. And it depends on the size of the group. This hotel only has like 10 or 12 rooms, so if it's a smaller group, we stay there. But all the places that we use are neat places. Yes, and we get around sometimes. Now this is a bit rough looking, but on the backs of pickup trucks, just to get us up that last mile up the side of the volcano to pick coffee beans, right? Wow, that's a trip for Americans and people who don't like. Now these are volunteers. These are the students for Global Visionaries. But we sit inside the trucks. Some people, if they're younger, because in Guatemala you can do it. You can stand on the outside and hang on to the railings. But it's not a very long ride that we do on the pickup trucks anymore. We used to go a bit further. And okay, prices. This is old, so I'll go past that. There. Let's see. Want more information? I say, look at the imprint website, right?
Right.
Okay.
Excellent.
There you go. Let's see. I want to show that one from current there. Let's see if I can't. Pardon me. Backwards. Kids, go back. No, it doesn't. Oh, I was going to show that one slide of the old film, but it doesn't matter. There you are.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
Have the PowerPoint, Read?
Yeah. Well, you can just shut off the screen share, and it'll just be us on the screen again.
There we are.
There we go. Well, thank you so much. There were a last few comments that came in on the Facebook page. One woman would really like to have the contact for the hotel. So if you will text that to me, Steve.
Okay, I'll make a note of it right now.
Yeah.
And these people are friends. They're lovely. Yep.
I will pass that on to this lady.
Good.
And somebody asked about an extension to go down to the Atlantic coast. I can address that when we're done talking
Good.
here.
Good.
We're going to let you go because I know you've got a lot on your plate. And
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to see the.
express my gratitude that you've been willing to take this time out. And I know it's because you are committed to this destination and sharing the gospel of Guatemala. And I think we did a good job this week of sharing what a somewhat unique experience it is to travel there and how rich and fulfilling it is in a way that not a lot of places can offer. So thank you for doing this PowerPoint for us. So we've got the visuals now to match all the stories that we had during the week. So hats off to you, Steve Smith. Thank you again. And to all of our viewers, thanks for tuning in. And I'll keep an eye on the comments. Sometimes things come in when you watch recordings, and I'll try to respond to those. So next week on Where in the World, we're going to be featuring Japan. So we've got a little bit of programming ready to go with that. Oh, and you may have noticed that Sarah's not here. She's on a plane headed to Portugal. You'll have to inquire on her website to see what she's doing over there. So, all right, Steve, thanks again.
Hey, thanks to you for the interest in the country and for donating all the profits from any tour and our time as well to this to good causes in Guatemala. Reed, thanks a million.
Well, I'm so happy to do that. It makes me feel great about what we're able to accomplish.
Same thing.
As travelers in the world. Okay, Steve, bye-bye to you and goodbye to our viewers. Thanks, everybody.